everyone, so I'm finishing up layer 3. It's one of my last shapes here. Just going over that a little bit, a little value. And as I'm doing this, I'm realizing that I have some cleanup to do. So as I'm working, I'm assessing and thinking about what the next steps are. So I suggest you do the same thing. Assess what's happening. How did you do? Is there any touch-ups you should be doing? So if I look at this, I can see that I didn't do a very good job of putting that piece of paper under my hand over here. So on this top layer, I am going to erase the smudges. And I happen to have a clean brush here, so I'm just going to use my brush. Because if I use my hand again, I'm going to make a mess. Okay, so you can see that this line here, this needs to be cleaned up. And at the end, we'll go back and do that for layer 4. So here's layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. And I'm looking and checking my shapes to see if I missed any. So I'm going to look at each shape. I'm going to start here. And I can see that each shape was done. Inside here, these shapes were done. I'm going to keep checking, touching up anything that I missed. Do you see anything that I missed? Looks pretty good. Okay, so layer 4, the last layer. So this is gets a little tricky because now these shapes are really small and I have to go in and make them even smaller. So these will definitely prove to be challenging. Maybe there's just one big hole underneath of it. So I'm going to start here. This is the largest area. And I'm going to start on this second layer and then go on from the third. And so that's underneath. So remember, you have X-ray vision. If you can see all the way through, where would it show up? So that's there. Here's another one here going this way. And I'm going to put another one this way. And if this continued under here, you'd see it here and here. So that one's done. I'm going to put one here. Here. And I'm going to continue that. I'm going to just keep going, filling in shapes. Notice I just shaded that one in. I'm almost afraid that I'm going to forget where I put what. And there's a little line went over. I'm going to try to clean that up a little bit as I go. So if you're afraid that you're going to forget where you put your lines, you can put a light layer value right inside those new shapes so you don't get confused. So you can see that that looks really low down, like that's the furthest away, and this is the last layer we'll be doing. Yeah, I recommend doing that. That made it a lot easier, so I don't have to go back and figure it out later. So as you draw this next set of shapes in, just add a light layer value on top so you remember where to go back in and do your shading on the edges. You can notice that some of these are getting really dark, and that's okay because they're the furthest away. And this is definitely the hardest layer. not for the value part, but for figuring out where to put them. Where to put those shapes to make it look interesting. Okay, so you can see how I went back in each of these holes and made more shapes inside of them, which then became holes when I added the value. I can keep going, and now I'm going to go back over to here, to this other side where I just put value in just to fill in the shape, and now I'm going to create that illusion of depth by having that transition of the darkest dark to that medium value, and that's really going to make it look like it's really further below and that there's really a dimensional thing happening. So I'm noticing that this side is much darker than this side over there. So I need to figure out why. I think that's just because there's more holes cut out in that last final layer. So I'm going to go back in and add as many shapes inside of the last layer as possible. I just got to be careful that I don't put it on top of a layer that's closest to us. Like for instance, this big area here, that's the second layer, so I don't want to cut that up. I don't want to go in that shape. It's that third layer that I'm looking for. So if this is 1, that's 2, that's 3. I could try to put another layer of shapes under here. That gets really dark. Turn it around and look at it in another direction. Sometimes turning your work around gives you new perspective. So I'm going to go back in here and clean these up. So for the last step for this, I'm just going to give my pencil a nice clean edge. I'm going to go back in, make sure you have an extra piece of copy paper to rest your hand on. And I'm going to go in, I'm going to clean the edges. So remember, don't come from this side of the shape, come from the inside of the shapes. And carefully clean up your lines. You want this top edge to be really crisp and clean. So clean up all the edges and erase any smudges that are standing out. So I'm going back in on each shape and just cleaning up those edges. Again, make sure you're working from the inside of the shape, not the outside line. So this is the inside. This would be the outside. This It got really smudged up. So I'm just gently, slowly making short little lines. I'm not trying to make that shape all at once. I don't trust my hand to be that steady.